Welcome to Political Perspectives. I'm Hugo Gurdon, Editor-in-Chief of the Washington Examiner. If you are joining us on YouTube, please remember to like and subscribe so that you become members of our channel and join us weekly. I'm here, as usual, with Byron York, Chief Political Correspondent of the Examiner. Thank you very much indeed for joining me again, Byron. We're talking immediately after President Trump has delivered the first address to the joint session of Congress of his second term. But I want to start with questions less about him and more about the Democrats. And before we actually talk about them, let's just watch a clip of the removal of Congressman Al Green because he was making a disturbance.
Finding that members continue to engage in willful and concerted disruption of proper decorum, the chair now directs the Sergeant-at-Arms to restore order. Remove this gentleman from the chamber.
So, Byron, Al Green, who has apparently filed the papers for the third impeachment of President Trump, was removed from the office by order of the Speaker because he was standing up and shaking his stick. It was like a personification of the prostrate Democratic Party, like a sort of dog barking at passing cars.
You know, Al Green is actually kind of an impeachment pioneer. I wrote about him in my book, Obsession. In 2017, when Trump had just entered office, Al Green filed the first impeachment articles against him. And if I remember correctly, Al Green wanted to impeach President Trump at that time for, among other things, disrespecting the NFL and the quarterback Colin Kaepernick. So Al Green's a very, very serious statesman. And we saw him, wrestled out of the House chamber last night. But you and I have talked about a number of issues like transgender and school athletics, right, that are 90-10 issues that right. There's huge public support for one side and very little public support for the other side. And we've remarked that Donald Trump has been pretty smart, although it does not take a rocket scientist to associate himself with the 90% side, and Democrats have associated themselves with the 10% side. So I think what you saw on Tuesday night at the joint session of Congress was Democrats sort of physically embodying that 10% side of every popular thing that Trump said. You can imagine, I'm sure there were dial groups going on out there somewhere, and the dial, Trump is talking about keeping boys out of girls' sports. The dials are going way up, and the Democrats are turning their little signs, saying false, no, we hate you. It was a terrible night for them.
Donald Trump and his administration are just very good at optics, and so they engineered the whole evening, and it was the longest speech I think of its sort in history, 90 minutes or so. They engineered it so that it was for maximum embarrassment of the Democrats, and there was actually, I thought, an aspect of the whole evening where it was almost like watching a TV show. There was one sort of tear-jerking moment or affecting or moving moment. There was the guy who wanted to matriculate at the West Point, and there was the young boy, the Secret Service agent, and there was, a wildlife reserve was named after the murdered, a young woman murdered by an illegal immigrant. So it was very much made for TV, and there was a lot of sort of show stuff, but there was also some solid stuff. Not least, I think perhaps most, that Trump was able to brag about how in about a month he has fixed the southern border. And it produced what I think was the best line of the night. Just let's have a look at him at this clip.
Since taking office, my administration has launched the most sweeping border and immigration crackdown in American history, and we quickly achieved the lowest numbers of illegal border crossers ever recorded. Thank you. The media and our friends in the Democrat Party kept saying we needed new legislation. We must have legislation to secure the border. But it turned out that all we really needed was a new president.
So that was a great line. That he was really rubbing in how he has been able to fix something that Biden didn't fix. It just took him arriving in office. So he was talking about really solid achievement in the first few weeks of his administration, wasn't he?
Well, that's what was so extraordinary about it. Usually, State of the Union addresses, this was technically not that. It was the first address is always just to a joint session of Congress. Anyway, usually they're laundry list speeches where they throw out all these proposals. Let's go back to the moon, or let's power our cars with hydrogen, or let's do this, or let's do that. And so they throw out all these proposals. Well, what Trump did, even though and in the first speech, that's often what a president has to do because he actually hasn't done anything by that point in 5-6 weeks into his presidency. And what Trump has done so much that we knew ahead of time that this was probably not going to be a laundry list speech. It was going to be a list of his own accomplishments speech. And the most solid of those being on the border. And here's another one of those issues in which Trump is on the big majority side of the issue and Democrats are on the minority side of it. So Trump made very effective use of that. And I think one other thing here, when I was watching this, I thought about a story that I had written for the Examiner, and it was in 2023. And it was called The Republican Presidential Stature Gap. And if you remember at the time, Trump was the former president. He was going to run again. There were some Republicans, Ron DeSantis, Nikki Haley, and others, who wanted to run against him. And they wanted to have debates. So there was this big debate about whether there would be any debates. Ultimately, there were not any. But I pointed out that in 2016, there had been an enormous stature gap between Trump and all the other Republicans running against him on the debate stages, but the short version is Trump was big and they were small. I mean, it's just the way it is. And that was in the Republican Party. And I think what you saw last night was the same thing happening. Trump is big and everybody else is small. And I think when Brit Hume of Fox News said that, you do not mistake here. If you ever doubted that Donald Trump was the political colossus of our time, this night and this speech should put that to rest. And I think that was correct.
Yeah. There were some aspects of the speech with which we would quibble. For example, we do not think it's good policy to make tips not subject to tax. It doesn't seem like good public policy. There was another thing which, and the Republicans are already finding it difficult to find how they're going to finance the making of the tax cuts permanent, although we would support that.
Yeah.
He also introduced another idea, which was to make car loans tax deductible. And, that is like a sort of subsidy for consumers piling on yet more debt. They're already underwater on debt, consumer debt, but this would actually make it worse. So there were some areas where, Trump was again sort of making promises, very popular, but actually not great policy, at least from our point of view.
Yeah, many years ago, some of those things actually were tax deductible, like credit card balances and things like that. It seems hard to imagine that today. The big issue there was the tariff issue, which I think Trump's speech just gave you an idea of how fluid this is, because Trump was going to speak at 9 o'clock, and by late afternoon, some of his administration figures were talking to the press, going on Fox News and Fox Business, saying that, this could be flexible. Maybe Mexico and maybe Canada, they're going to come up with some new anti-fentanyl, anti-smuggling actions, and we can either reduce these tariffs or postpone them or just kill them altogether. So I think you saw, we all know how much Trump is affected by the stock market. He sees it kind of as a I don't know an indicator of how well he's doing. Went down 1,300 points in 2 days,
Right.
and all of a sudden the tariffs become a little more flexible. So we'll see what happens, but that's what you saw before the speech.
Yeah, and he talked about there being a short-term period of disturbance, and it did give a little window into some concerns that perhaps are building inside the administration about prices and that even though the Democrats are a very ineffective opposition at the moment, the one area that they seem to be focusing in on is prices, and you can clearly see the administration Trump being aware of that. Finally, I wanted to turn to a subject not to do with what we were watching in the speech, but a move in the nation's capital. You and I, being creatures of the Washington swamp, have been very aware over the course of the last 5 years of Black Lives Matter Plaza, which is a section of 16th Street right in the neighborhood of the White House. There are moves up on Capitol Hill amongst Republicans to eradicate that piece of massive municipal graffiti, but now the mayor is proposing changes and removing that. It supports a grifting organization, which just actually symbolized how bad racial politics have become in this country since Obama. But all I can say is it's a welcome move from my point of view. I suspect it's a welcome move from yours too, no?
Yeah, it's interesting. Mayor Bowser, who was the mayor when Trump was president the first time, specifically said that they painted Black Lives Matter in these huge permanent yellow letters on 16th Street, specifically did it there so the president could see it, meaning President Trump. Then we changed presidents, get a Democratic president. Presumably she's happier. She's a Democrat too. But they leave it up the whole time. And now you get Congress who's actually been talking, Republicans have been talking about doing a lot more with the District of Columbia than just getting rid of Black Lives Matter Plaza.
Right.
And they're talking about actually taking over some aspects of district government. So now the mayor says, oh, let's change it. Let's get rid of it. So it is a welcome development. And it's interesting to note that it was specifically an anti-Trump measure when it began.
Right. Well, we'll be looking out of our windows to watch its removal with great happiness. Byron, thanks very much for joining me. I'd like to thank our viewers once again. Again, please, if you're on YouTube, like and subscribe to the Washington Examiner channel, and join us again next time.